All right, welcome TRT members and everyone. Hope you guys are doing well. Friday afternoon here at the bell. Let's go over the charts and let's peer into the next week, see what's happening. Definitely all the bear charts throughout the entire FinTwit and including myself all got virtually destroyed today by upbeat numbers on the non-farm payrolls and of course ISM data. We had four Fed speakers today, which did not affect the markets. So where do we go from here? And that's the big question for next week, especially headed into the CPI report, headline CPI on Thursday. So you have to mark your calendars right now. Thursday, next Thursday, it's going to be the 12th, right? And it's going to be 8:30 a.m. Eastern time. That would be your core CPI and CPI reading for month over month and year over year. In addition to that, something to be mindful of is on Tuesday morning, very early in the morning, 8 a.m., Fed Powell is set to speak or deliver some type of remarks at some conference. I'm not sure what it is, but he's going to be speaking that morning. So be careful with your calls and puts or whatever positions you have. It's going to be interesting. I don't think it's going to be anything, might be nothing burger. He's just going to make some remarks. I don't think he's going to talk about monetary policy, inflation, etc. Not like the Brookings conference or a Jackson Hole speech. It's not, I don't think it's going to be anything like that. But going into the following week here, as far as data wise, we don't have a ton of data. Everything, I think all eyes next week is going to be on the core CPI report. And my estimate is that December energy prices did shoot up a little bit. So I'm actually expecting the CPI for this coming Thursday is going to be a little bit hotter than expected. Now, if you look at the CPI, and what they're expecting year over year in December is going to be 6.5%. All right, that is the forecast. And they're forecasting it down from 7.1%. Remember, last time on December 13th, when we actually got those numbers, the SPY hit 414 and completely sold off the entire day. If you guys remember that. So just be careful now that we had a good run up today, and we might continue. There might be some bullish continuation going into next week. Just be careful, because if we run right into resistance or some type of trend line resistance, I'll take a look at that. Expect that sell off to come, even if it's low. Okay, but I don't think it's going to come in low at 6.5. That's really a very low expectation for CPI, given that 7.1% was last month, and we beat that. The forecast was 7.3 last month, and we actually beat that by slightly. So I do think that if the CPI does come in lower than 6.5, yes, I think the market has some room to rally. All right. So let's go ahead and start with the daily chart here on the SPY. So higher volume today. CCI started to turn up. The stochastics are already turning up here on the daily chart. And we actually achieved a few milestones today, closing at 388. We actually closed above the EMA 915, 3450, and the simple moving average 20. We actually broke out of this bear flag setup that I've been talking about over the last couple of weeks here. And finally, it's actually starting to show some strength. And this, I think this, virtually caught everybody off guard, especially with hot JOLTS data, hot jobless data. But the NFP was what the market was really looking for, and it gave its confirmation today. So very nice spike here. We closed right at 388. You can see that right here in this level is going to be resistance, right about the 390 level. We hit exactly right on the 390 this morning or this afternoon and pulled back a little bit, but it's not much of a pullback. But still, this is a good area to watch going into next week. They might run it up in the pre-market. I think 390 is going to be a major resistance going into next week. If we can clear 390, and there's this hype about CPI or a moderate CPI, the moving average 200 is right here at 398. Okay. If we run into this 398 area, which I kind of doubt, but then if we do, then guess what, folks? That's going to be a major sell to news event. Okay. Remember, one of the Feds said today that they expect that the inflation is moderated. Okay, so that's kind of dovish comments, right? So the market is just continuing to push. However, 390 is going to be a big area to see if it can overcome that. Okay. But if we can, I'm just going to put a target here at 390 next week. If we can clear 390, we should be able to hit about 395 or so. So I'm going to put a target at the 395 level. Now, with that being said, you have to be mindful. I'm going to go over to the hourly charts here. Is that this run up today, all right, has caused all your stochastics and your oversold, overbought indicators to extremely overbought. Okay. The CCI and stochastics are generally more reliable on the minute, 30-minute, 1 hour charts. Okay. And you can see that we're way above here. Every time we cycle up on the stochastics in this area, you can always see a nice pullback. Okay. If we cannot hit that 390 area, guess what, folks? I do expect us to at least pull back on possibly Monday morning towards the 386, 385 area to retest some levels. And obviously, there's a lot of market imbalance. Okay. A lot of big candlesticks today, and the fair value gaps. Those are going to have to get filled. So I do expect some type of pullback, and then we'll retry 390 again. And if we can actually carry that momentum forward, I do think you'll see 395 next week on the SPYs here. So with that, let's go ahead and look at the weekly real quick just to see. So the S&P 500 did end green this week, okay, for the first time in 4 straight weeks. We have finally ended green. All right. We got rejected right here at the 915 cloud on the weekly so far at the 388, 389 level. You have pretty good volume on the week versus the week before, which is positive. And given that this is the first week of the year, and last week was obviously towards New Year, et cetera, so definitely lower volumes, but good volume on the week so far. So again, we just got to be careful of this run up into CPI report. If you guys remember, everybody was caught off guard when the CPI came out on December 2nd, and we shot up to 414 and sold off heavily. All right. So if we were to actually continue a run up here into this trend line, so we can expect what can we expect? So right about that would place us right about 402, about the 400 area. All right. A couple things that's going to have to happen if that's going to occur. If we're going to hit anywhere near 400, you're going to have lower CPI report, and also obviously the continuation of this trend. If the CPI is hotter than expected, then I think that trend gets rejected pretty quickly. All right, so let's go ahead and move over to the Qs. Okay, so here is a weekly Q chart. Not looking as good as the SPYs, right? The tech sector overall is still pretty weak. Okay, Amazon still about $85 or so. Apple did run up, but kind of hit a resistance at 130 today, topped out at 130 and never attempted 130 again. So watch out for Apple next week. We'll talk about that in a second. But again, you have this trend line resistance here. If the tech sector if it's going to rally, it's got a lot of work to do. All right, we rejected 270. It hit about right under 270 today and rejected. So that was actually my upside target this week for the Q. So it actually hit a little bit. But then if we actually run up into CPI 290, that seems a little bit further out there if Apple cannot rally. All right, you have pretty good volume on the weekly. However, look at this candlestick, right? I mean, it's just we barely closed green on the Qs for the week. And you do have a kind of a classic what's it called, dragonfly doji on the weekly. So that is bullish, but it needs to hop over 270 on the weekly. All right, look at this chart here, another bear flag, but actually we close above this bear flag. So this bear flag becomes invalidated. And all week long, since I think December 22nd, we've been able to hold 260 right on the spot. Okay, and today pre-market we hit 260 again before the ramp up. Okay, on the data. Whatever Q has got to do, it's got to start moving upwards, okay? Or else the tech sector just continues to look weaker next to the S&P 500. So as you know, the 52-week low on the on the Qs is about 254. All right. A lot of supply up here as well. So anyway, upside target for the coming week, we have an SMA 20 right here, about 272. I do expect at some point next week, the Q can actually move over 270. and 272 will be an upside target, and we'll have to go from there as the market's going to start consolidating, right? We might even get a few days of consolidation next week, waiting for the CPI because the markets have done that before. Either way, right? With this kind of run up on the daily here so far, I'd be surprised if we don't get any type of pullback here towards some clouds here, test some support and resistance here. All right. So, for example, if we look at the 30-minute chart here, this area was a big resistance on the. This is the 1-hour chart, by the way. So it's got to test at least this 387 mark, right, just to see if it actually can hold. If it can't, then we start sliding a little bit more. All right, going into next week. Over on the 30-minute chart, lots of levels to consider. I won't go through all of that, but you have big time resistance at the 390 level. You can see right here, we started getting weak about 389.25s. It's got to hop over 290 in order for us to start filling this gap up here. There's a small gap up here at 400. But once again, I'm putting an upside target. If we can hop over 390, then we can likely see 395 on the SPYs going into next week. But once again, looking at a smaller time frame, even your 30-minute chart, right? All the CCI and also stochastics are overbought, okay, quite a bit. And you can see some selling volume coming in at the end of the day here. So what could it be? Obviously, the shorts could start piling in up to 390, a little bit of fear about, obviously the CPI going into next week, et cetera, et cetera. So once again, upside target 390, 395. If the CPI report is not what the market wants to see, I think we'll go right back to 380. All right. With that being said, I'll see you guys on Monday morning.